Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In podcast. Coming off the heels of UFC 288, we travel over to the East Coast, live in front of a crowd again. This Saturday's UFC Charlotte. Rumor had it, supposed to be Nashville. Would have been nice to have us an event back here again. But UFC's lined us up with some nice heavyweights in the main event. We have knockout artist Jairzinho Rozenstruik taking on rising contender and Jailton Almeida. And now the co-main event, another exciting fight, man. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. Brings us to a total of 12 fights. It's live on ABC on Saturday during the day. Prelims start at 11:30 Eastern time. Always love us a good set of morning fights there. Before we get into things, make sure to do us a quick favor. Like the video, sub to the channel if you haven't before. Same things we always ask for every week. As far as last week, UFC 288, mixed bag of results here for the podcast. Main event was an absolute massive swing for you. I didn't have any money on it personally, but after the final bell, I did have Henry up 3 rounds, man, and a win there makes your night look a whole lot different. Go ahead and recap how we finished last week.
Yeah, so this is not how I'd like to be wearing the casual cap. We are doing a little makeshift casual hat for this podcast until we figure it out on this new way of doing the podcast. So we'll touch on your card first. Looks very different from my card. You only had one loss on the night. We'll start off with your biggest bet of the card, which was Yan Xiaonan plus 160. Then you also had her inside the distance at plus 800. That was a huge cash for you, roughly about a 4-unit cash right there for you. You also had fight starts round 3 at minus 400 for the main event.
Lost Evloev there.
What was that?
Lost Evloev. Part one
right.
Fighting Bryce there.
Right. And then the under 1.5 rounds for the Parker Porter Braxton Smith fight. That one, wow. After that performance from Braxton Smith, there's no way that doesn't hit every single time. Your only loss on the night was the Williams inside the distance minus 150. I know a lot of people that were on that. And honestly, Williams just didn't look like himself out there. He's kind of underperformed in a couple of spots where he's been a favorite. So I think that'll be something that we have to take into account moving forward. You ended up the night positive 5.75 units with an 88% return on investment. Awesome night, and definitely something that you want to keep rolling. Looking over at my night, you touched on the main event being a huge swing point for me. It was about a 5.5 unit swing for a round 5 to be judged for Aljamain Sterling. It's a pretty tough L to take, but ultimately I was not holding the plus money ticket on a split decision win, so I can't be mad at anybody but myself. I did end up tailing the Yao Zanan pick. I don't know. You had the perfect read on the fight. I wasn't as confident, but after hearing your take and a couple other people being pretty confident on the Yan side, I decided to tail and make that one of my late plays, which ended up being one of my only plays that hit. You look at the Joseph Holmes right off the bat against Claudio Ribeiro. I don't know, man. I thought that he got the fight where I wanted a couple of times. He just did not deliver. Had him straight up and by submission. Neither one of those got close enough to where I play that again, and he just didn't put on a performance that I'd like to see out of any fighter that I'm backing. I got a little bit greedy on the Frivola by decision. He was obviously the side, and he didn't really use the wrestling like I thought he would, but he was winning the striking exchanges too. So definitely an awesome performance by him. I think I should have just been on the Frivola side though if I was going to play it. And then let's see. Porter wins round 2. Another one of those where I don't think Braxton Smith is getting out of the first round ever. So that one, bad bet, even at a plus 650 number, although Porter was definitely the side in that fight. And then I had the co-main event doesn't go to decision. And I don't know, man. You got Bilal coming in saying that he was hurt with his ankle, and then Burns' shoulder getting blown out like second round. It's odd that one didn't come to a finish, but Burns is tough and Bilal doesn't finish people. So it was written in the stars already. And then my other late play of the night, my only other win, Evloev wins the fight in round 3 or by decision minus 120. Definitely a little bit sketchy. I don't think anybody expected Lopez to have the fight that he did, but I thought it was an amazing way to get a minus 1,000 favorite to almost even money. And I think that I'd make that play again. I ended up the night minus 6.4 units, minus 60% return on investment. One that I'd like to put behind me. That's a tough L, but it was due. I've been on a pretty hot streak up until this point, And this one kind of levels me out, makes me a little bit timid to play stuff this week, but I'm going to continue to follow my gut. It's done well for me so far.
Good stuff.
So moving into the main event of the evening, it's a heavyweight bout between Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Jailton Almeida. Huge style clash right here. Jailton cut his path through the heavyweight division into the rankings and has been impressive to say the least. We saw when he first came into the UFC that he's able to cut to 205 pounds. And, to talk about how smoothly he got those finishes at 205, it was definitely a surprise to me to see him jump up to heavyweight to begin with. But since he has moved to heavyweight, he's 3-0, all 3 finishes within 2 rounds. And he stuck to a fairly straightforward game plan in all of those bouts. He finds his range by throwing those long front kicks up the middle, and he sets up the power double leg or the body lock takedown. And then you have to deal with his world-class grappling. His top pressure is insane. And in the heavyweight division, I think that he has the ability to go pretty far with his particular skill set. Rozenstruik, on the other hand, in a little bit different boat where we've kind of already seen his run to the title. And considering how his last few losses have gone, I think we're getting to a point where he could be, the sacrificial lamb coming into this fight against the UFC's newest prospect. Coming up the rankings for Rozenstruik, he was feared for his ability to end a fight with a single lead left hook. And, it was like you blinked and his opponents were in la la land on their butt, don't really know what hit him. So it took a replay to actually see where this power is coming from Rozenstruik. But since he's made that title run in 2019, the blueprint of how to beat somebody like Rozenstruik has kind of been laid out. He's a Surinamese kickboxer. And honestly, I think it plays right into the strengths of Jailton. Like most of Jailton's fights, I think that we're going to find out really soon how this is going to go. I expect a shot out of Jailton within the first 30 seconds and a subsequent finish shortly after. If Rozenstruik is able to keep this fight standing, I think we're talking about a whole different fight. But judging by Rozenstruik's past performances, I'm afraid he's going to suffer the same fate as Jailton's last few opponents. If this does stay on the feet, though, I think that a plus 400 ticket is going to look like an absolute gift. I do think that this is the biggest step up in competition that Jailton's had so far in the UFC. So that's definitely something that you got to watch out for. And then having a fighter like Jailton who hasn't seen those later rounds, I do think that it's something to be a little bit wary about, which is ultimately why I haven't made a play on Jailton. Even though I see all these advantages that he has, it's tough to trust a fighter that I haven't seen really be tested, especially at the highest level. So as he moves up, I do think that he's going to run into some problems, just like we saw Khamzat Chimaev with Gilbert Burns. There will be somebody who's able to stop that initial takedown and take him into deep waters. So since the fact that we haven't seen that is why I'm laying off, but Jailton Almeida is the pick here.
Yeah, Jailton Almeida is easily the pick here. Originally slated for the co-main event, it's now been bumped up to the main event. It's live during the day on ABC, and I promise you that's not to showcase Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who's going to throw 4 leg kicks over 25 minutes. It's 100% to promote their new contender in Jailton Almeida, in my opinion, and gave him one of the more tailor-made matchups for him in the top 10. Rozenstruik is, he's an athletic freak of himself. The guy moves extremely well for his size. He's the best fighter, best striker Jailton's ever stood across from. And coming into the UFC with a kickboxing background, only 8 pro fights. The UFC's already signed him 2-3 fights in. He's already jumping into the deep waters, fighting Arlovsky, main eventing against Alistar in 5 rounders. I just can't really shake how much of a stylistic disadvantage that he's at here in this one. Jailton is absolutely a physical specimen as well. On every single Brazilian vitamin there is known to man. And when I see him out here lifting guys like Parker Porter up in the air, I don't think he's going to have any issues finding that double leg on Rozenstruik either. I'm with you. I think that takedown comes pretty early in round 1. And after that, I think it's up to Rozenstruik, honestly, as to what's going to happen next. Is the guy just going to kind of cover up and play it safe, ruin everybody's round 1 tickets and get to the second round kind of like Shamil did? Or is he going to open himself up, try to get back to his feet? And then I think it's even tricky trying to play a prop on Jailton because he's got a ground and pound finish and he's got submission wins. So, again, I feel like it's up to Rozenstruik how this finish is going to happen. I look at trying to parlay violence here as well, but I ultimately just got back to the side of Jailton Almeida because of how he was able just to kind of ride the back of Shamil, let time elapse, and maybe as you get further up in stiffer competition, they're going to be better defensively sound on the mat, and it might take him longer to get those finishes. The guy's a legit BJJ player, competes in the gi, and truth be told, I do think he's going to do whatever he wants to Rozenstruik when he gets him on the mat. I think when he gets him on the mat, man, he's going to cover that 85-90% price tag on it. Moving on, co-main event, originally scheduled for the main event for 25 minutes. I don't honestly think we're even going to really need 15 here. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. Smith has shown a lot more success to me since moving up to 205. Even got his shot, against Johnny Bones Jones, the GOAT. Spent 25 minutes in fetal position, but, hey, he got his title shot. I think at this point, the fight miles are starting to add up for the guy. You throw in the fact that he's spending time behind the commentary booth now, the home robbery situation a couple years ago. I just think Anthony Smith's best days are behind him. And while we do give him shit for getting in fetal position, shelling up in a lot of these fights, the guy's as tough as they come. He's not ever going to quit on himself. And when you see him handle the illegal shot from Jones and his title shot opportunity compared to how Aljo handled it, there's always a different level of respect for the guy there as well. Very good size for 205. And he's got elite BJJ, man. He's one of the few guys that I know who is legitimately dangerous off his back and has shown it time and time again. He's got a nice calf kick. My issue is I struggle to see where Johnny fits into the caliber opponents that Anthony loses and wins. Anthony's going to turn back these prospects like Devin Clark, like Ryan Spann. He's going to protect that top 7, 8 of the division and turn those guys back. But, anytime he takes a step into that top 5, top 6, taking on Blockowitz, Rakic, Jiri, Jamal, Ankalaev, Glover now, he's retired. I think he's proven time and time again that he's way over his head in those type of elite matchups. Talent-wise, I kind of rate Johnny right in the middle of them. I think he's better than a Devin Clark and a Ryan Spann, but I definitely don't think he's a top 5 guy in the world right now. He's twice the athlete of Anthony Smith. He's got a great frame, unreal speed, and he throws a whole lot of unorthodox strikes at you, which makes him a handful, man. He's got all the physical advantages you could want in this. He's a fast starter with almost all of his wins coming in round 1. Got back on track after a bit of a skid. He's now finished Kutelaba and Craig with first-round knockouts and subs. I don't necessarily know if I can count Johnny Walker to mix in takedowns here, which I think has been proven to be the blueprint to beat Lionheart. And then if it gets hairy, I don't necessarily think I can count Johnny Walker's chin, to hold up here as well. So ultimately, I have decided to pass on the co-main event. Whatever so slightly, man. I'm going to lead Johnny Walker. How about yourself?
So, this is one of those fights where historically neither one of these guys are somebody that you want to be placing your money on. Like you said, Smith has never really been able to put more than a few wins together in the UFC. And, it's just kind of like sometimes he's on, sometimes he's not. You're not sure which one's going to be coming into the octagon. And then, for Walker, like you said, originally came into the UFC with one of the most wildest, volatile fighting styles we've ever seen from anybody, which made him extremely exciting to watch, but caused him to lose by some terrifying KOs. We've seen a little bit of a turnaround for Walker in his last 2 bouts with those first-round finishes, which is nice because after his bout with Thiago Santos, I was a little bit worried that we were only going to see the only way that we were going to see Johnny Walker win was point fighting under John Kavanagh, Now, in this matchup, I see why it's pick'ems. We've never seen Anthony Smith, dominate his opponents from bell to bell. He usually has to survive the fire from his opponents early, and then he finds success later on in the fight. And I don't think that this fight is going to be any different. I think on the feet, Walker being as athletic and explosive as he is, I expect him to push that pace early and look for a finish over someone like Smith, who's, taken 10 months off since his last bout, coming off of a KO loss. I think if Smith is able to avoid getting finished early, I think that's where his experience and his skill set to drag Walker into deep waters will start to come out. Smith has never really been good at getting his fights to the mat. He's only scored a 27% takedown accuracy, but I do think that that's where he'll find the most success against a 6'6" striker in Johnny Walker. Like I said, if he's able to drag this fight out, Walker's going to give him the opportunities to get the fight to the mat, whether it's overextending on some of his punches or just getting worn down against the cage. Oddly enough, because of the overall skill set of Smith, I think that we're getting a pretty favorable price tag here. If it weren't for his most recent KO loss to Ankalaev and Walker's most recent victories, I do think we see a lot of, the minus 180 range for Smith for a good portion of both these guys' UFC careers. Probably laying off for me as well, but it's tough to shake the feeling that we're not getting a buy low spot here for a marginally better fighter in Anthony Smith. So I'm going to be taking Anthony Smith. I just struggle to find where he's going to be able to get this to a point where he will be able to find success. And that you're going to be biting your nails in that first round with Johnny Walker. So I'll go with Smith here, but not confident either. For our next fight, my fight of the night for the card, I've got Alex Morono taking on Tim Dirty Bird Means. I think both these guys have had favorable UFC careers given their actual skill set. It seems like a shame to kind of skip over somebody like these two guys after 43 UFC fights between the two. I think that if they made this fight sooner, that it would be a much closer line. But ultimately, we're looking at a 39-year-old Tim Means coming off of back-to-back losses to Kevin Holland and Max Griffin. And although he looked, decent up until the point of losing in both of them, it did start to seem like you could start to see the wear and tear of 45 professional fights starting to take place in Means' career. He's not eating shots too well. He no longer has the physicality that he once did. And I think both of those things that are something that kept all of his past fights competitive. With Alex Morono, you have someone who's also coming off of a loss to Santiago Ponzinibbio. He accepted that bout on short notice when Pon's original opponent, Robbie Lawler, pulled out. And for what it's worth, I do think that Alex, went out there, made a good account of himself. Sure, he was finished. So if you look at it on paper, it doesn't look good, but he was cruising to a decision win before he lost that one, at least on 2 out of the 3 judges' scorecards. And he was riding a 4-fight win streak before the Ponzinibbio loss. So I can't help but feel like this is the UFC kind of throwing both these guys a bone in this matchup. For Means, I've already talked about he's an aging fighter, but he should only be fighting certain levels of UFC competition at this point in his career. Throwing him to the dogs with Kevin Holland doesn't seem like a very nice move by the UFC in hindsight, And guys like Moreno is a much better matchup for him at this point in his career. Where you look at it for the Moreno side, and this honestly does seem like a gift from the UFC. He was on that legit winning streak before jumping in on a few days' notice, and it seems like a very winnable matchup for Morono to get back on his winning ways. Almost like a thank you from the UFC for taking that short notice fight and saving that. I think Morono has the pressure for 3 rounds with a full camp to slowly break down those defenses of Means and eventually test that chin. I also think that Morono has the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to threaten attacks if the fight does find its way onto the mat, and then good enough scrambling to wind up on top and secure rounds if they do get into scrambles. If I were to bet on the total, I would lean towards the over, but considering that both these guys are aging fighters and coming off of recent losses, I do think that you're almost playing with fire, expecting them to both perform over 15 minutes. My pick is going to be Alex Morono. I hate the price tag because of the KO loss that he's coming off of, but I do think that he's the rightful favorite here.
Good scrap between, like you said, 2 veterans. I like it. Dirty Bird, I think he's the superior boxer of the 2. He's the one who's always going to be throwing in combination. He digs to the body. He has good pressure and a long frame, and shown that he can put that volume out over 15 minutes. And lately he seems to kind of like wrestling. I know he's coaching and stuff outside the cage, but when it comes to bringing it into the cage, he reverts back to the old ways of getting in your face and boxing on the inside. And that is a bit of a concern because I think the durability of Tim Means is on the decline, and he likes to kind of get in those wars on the feet and sometimes just doesn't have the chin for it. I'm just not necessarily sold on Morono's just, stopping power. Honestly, I'm not sold on his finishing ability. He's another one of the guys that's more volume over power to me, a guy who's historically slowed down in the third round, not just the Ponzinibbio fight on short notice. And yeah, I want to give him props where he's due because he looked phenomenal on short notice, dropping Ponzinibbio, I think, in every single round, hurting him bad. But at the end of the day, he did get slept really bad, and that doesn't feel like it was that long ago. I don't have any action on your fight here, but I don't really get the price tag. I don't get the people rushing to the window here to bet Alex Morono. I don't really get them making them a staple on their parlays this week. I think these guys typically tend to go to decision a lot. I typically lean to the over 2.5 here as well. To me, it almost feels dog or pass at this price tag. I'm going to side with Alex Morono because I think he's, like, again, the younger, the fresher, the guy with the more pressure, potentially takedown upside. But you run this fight back a couple years ago, man, and I'm taking this shot on Tim Means all day. My fight of the night, I'm going to go with Daniel D-Rod Rodriguez taking on Ian Garry. Garry getting what a lot of people consider his first big step up in competition, in the UFC. And, I talk the kid up a lot. I'm very high on Ian Garry, 25 years old. The guy's 11-0, and the confidence, the belief he has in himself, next to none. Trains at a great camp in Killcliff. I mean, he's in a room full of killers and talked very highly about his distance management. When he's on, he looks like one of the better strikers on the roster to me. He's got really good footwork in and out of range, lets off in combination, again, dig into the body, ton of feints. He switches levels with all kind of kicks. There's just a wide variety of attacks at you and a ton of volume coming at you. It lips in 100 significant strikes numerous times now. And I think he has a very slept-on ground game that we just haven't seen yet. He's also been 5 rounds in the past as well in Cage Warriors. The big issue I see with him, same as everybody, the tall man defense. He typically tries to get in and out of range, fade back instead of keeping the hands up. And that could be a detriment as you climb the rankings. But I think seeing him cracked by Song Kanong last time, I thought he showed excellent recoverability and able to get back to his feet and then win every minute and get the stoppage in the third round. With Daniel Rodriguez, we're talking about a guy who's 11 years older at 36 years old, a late start to the UFC, but to be honest, fought some pretty good competition right out the gates. When I look at the people he struggled to, though, I'm pretty sure you took a shot on Nicholas Dalby there, a karate kind of stance fighter, a guy who throws a ton of volume, knows how to keep that range, throws a ton of kicks. And what'd he do? He stifled, D-Rod's boxing with all the kicks. D-Rod wasn't letting his hands go. And I think Ian Garry does the exact thing of Dalby, just a whole lot better. I see him submitted by Neil Magny, and Magny's not a finisher, man. Magny's usually the guy getting taken down and submitted, not the guy typically submitting guys. It wasn't really the best look for me. And then you throw in Dwight Grant, sending him flying across the octagon, landing the big overhand. I think D-Rod is very KO reliant because I think he's going to struggle to keep up the volume of Ian Garry. I think he's going to get behind very quick. I think Ian's hungrier. I think at 25 in a good camp, he is improving every single day. Mentality is there. The skill set's there. I think truly D-Rod is just another stepping stone to the top 10 of the welterweight division for Ian Garry. I'm very high on this guy. I think he comes through on Saturday.
Yeah, I see this fight just a little bit differently. I will side with Garry ultimately, but I don't think that this price tag is warranted. I'll first off start by saying that I think D-Rod's his toughest opponent to date, which in and of itself kind of gives you it makes me want to fade him. And not to mention Ian Garry has not covered his price tag in his last few bouts. The Kanan Song one being the most obvious one, but I think D-Rod brings similar or better pressure than Song Kanan with more power. So I think that this is a spot where I'm looking at a prop to play Daniel Rodriguez. His finish only line is +1 or +250, his exact same as his money line. Like you said, I do think that he's pretty KO reliant, and being that we've seen Ian Garry at only 25 get caught really bad, probably could have been stopped by a lot of different refs that didn't give him the chance to fight out of that getting dropped. I think that there's a real chance that Daniel Rodriguez can get the finish here. So I love that it's your fight to watch, because I do think it's going to be a good one. But I think Ian Garry might be up for his toughest challenge yet. Moving on to the fighter to watch, I'm taking Ji Young Kim. Not so much because she puts on excellent performances, but just because of where she's at right now in her UFC career. She's riding a 4-fight losing streak coming into this matchup, and it's absolutely her time to put up or shut up. As a South Korean fighter right here, she started off their UFC career going 3-2, and looked to be a serviceable opponent in the flyweight division. But now, it seems like she couldn't buy a fight if she wanted to. We're still seeing her as a 2-1 favorite here against Mandy Bohm. And that in and of itself tells you about the skill set of Mandy. But it's really hard to shake the feeling that the UFC is doing everything that they can to get Ji Young Kim a win here. Especially after this fight had already fell through once. The UFC rebooking it seems really intentional to me. Kim, like I said, hadn't really turned heads with her performances to this point. But there's definitely some decent takeaways when I see her fight. The first is her volume. We've seen in her past performances where it felt like she wasn't doing enough to get the nod, but we have seen her in her last few performances, albeit losses, eclipsing 100 landed strikes on her opponents, which we don't see much of in the women's divisions. It would be silly to ignore that she hasn't been taken down in her last 5 fights, which have certainly contributed to those decision losses. But thankfully, she's fighting someone in Mandy Bohm who's yet to land a UFC takedown. She's fought worse competition and lost. I think if Kim manages to keep the fight on the feet, I think that she has the striking and the volume to keep Bohm on the end of her punches and finally get that nod she's been looking for on the judges' scorecards that she hasn't seen since 2018.
Yeah. Like Parker Porter last week. And, I'm not going to lay the juice here, but I think there is a dang good chance Ji Young Kim comes out here and gets the easiest 30-27 that we've seen in a minute with, again, the volume over 100 strikes. Mandy Bohm, not much of a takedown threat. I don't want to lay chalk on women's MMA again and get burnt, but I think Ji Young Kim is in a fantastic spot to get back on track as well. And the line's creeping down, which I'm quite shocked to see. My fighter to watch, going to go with Carlos Ulberg, every lady's favorite fighter and probably one of the most popular parlay pieces this week. I got in him early on Sunday. I think he's in a good spot to win. He's 3-1 in the UFC. The one blemish on his record in the UFC is the comeback from Kennedy and Nzechukwu, and I'm pretty sure that's Carlos's debut, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a loss. It's not aging poorly by no means, and a fight Ulberg 100% had his moments in as well. The win over Negromariano last time out, I thought he looked like he kind of turned the corner in that fight, man. He looked sharp. He didn't rush anything, and that's a very tough dude to put away, and he looked sharp doing it. Trains at City Kickboxing, good friends with Izzy, and man, their game resembles each other a whole lot. They're both very good kickboxers. They mix in, the kick, switching levels with them. What I like the best, the way he works behind his jab, man, sets everything up with it. Basically stung Negamariano with it, then hit him with the left hook as he was coming in. I really like what I see on the feet from this guy. He's still working on the defensive grappling, but again, in this matchup here, I think the guys in the UFC have given him Ihor as someone who's going to come forward and give him the striking kind of fight that he wants. Ihor, very fraudulent record. You got a guy who's 10, 11 pro fights, still fighting 0-0 guys in the Ukraine. Absolutely mollywopped by Negamariano. Ihor's striking defense, very bad. And I think the UFC really, really tried to dig to the bottom of the barrel to get Shogun to win on his way out in Brazil. I think the UFC is not high on Ihor. I don't think they're like his skill set. They put him in the contender series. They threw him up against, I'm pretty sure, a Russian as a massive underdog. They didn't expect him to come through there. I think Ulberg puts this guy away in the first or second round on the feet. They've moved Ulberg fight to the main card now. I think Ulberg's my fighter to watch this week.
I like that he's your fighter to watch. I do have some problems with him being this big of a favorite. The first being that he's a one-dimensional fighter. It sucks that you have to take a guy who's supposedly going to win this 80+% of the times without having an option B, I don't like that at all. But as far as when I watch these guys back, I do think that it's set up for Ulberg to get this finish on the feet, as Ihor does hold his hands down and allow for people to land strikes on him. So I like Ulberg being your fighter to watch, although I'm personally a little skeptical about the price tag. We move on to, is it our underdog section right now? Our underdog section of the fight. None of them have completely stuck out to me up until this point, but if I am going to side with somebody, I think it's going to be Daniel Rodriguez here. We've already kind of touched on the reasons why he's going to have some advantages, and I think it's really just the power. It's a puncher's chance, and when I look at how he's going to get this done, I agree that Machado or Garry has some underrated BJJ skills. I just don't see him getting the fight to the mat using his wrestling. If this fight stays on the feet, I do think that it's, two guys who are around the same level that are going to be throwing, I think that Rodriguez has the power, so there's a possibility of him winning rounds with one shot. I know that you talked about Dwight Grant catching him once. I also think that Daniel Rodriguez showed a great ability to recover in that fight as well. So if we're just going to get a dog fight on the feet, I don't see Garry getting the fight to the mat at his will, on his terms. I think that this is a decent fight for what we see as like a plus 250 in Daniel Rodriguez. So I'll take him as my dog, although I'm not super confident about it, and I might not be playing it myself.
Yeah, don't necessarily agree with that one. I don't think you're going to agree with my underdog here as well. I took Matt Brown. Any point in these guys' careers, man, I really don't think Matt Brown should be a 2-1 dog to Court McGee, much less when Court McGee is coming off of a bad TKO loss. To me, a couple years back, maybe you take the durability concerns away from Matt Brown. And this is a 50-50 fight to me. I feel at 42 years old, he's still giving a good account of himself. I know he gets finished in the Baeza fight in round 2, but he hurts Baeza badly in round 1. That's a good young prospect you're going toe-to-toe with. Finishes Diego Lima. And then I thought he should have got the nod against Brian Barberena. I bet him there. I thought he won the first 2 rounds. On the feet, I think the striking is pretty even. I think Matt has faster hands. I think Matt has the power edge. And statistically, he's the more accurate of the two. He's better defensively as well. And when the fight hits the mat, I think, again, I just go back to Matt having more finishing upside. In 16 wins in the UFC, Matt Brown's finished 14 of them. In the 10 UFC wins Court McGee has had, he's only had 2 submission wins. And that's another thing that I like to factor in if I'm going to look at an underdog, is when the underdog has twice the finishing potential of the guy who's the big favorite. And in this case, I think Matt Brown does. I just have to know that Matt Brown is far past his prime. He does seem to slow down in fights. And the one thing Court's probably always had over Matt Brown is the superior gas tank. So I don't necessarily know if I end up getting there, but at plus 195, I keep going back to just being a few years ago, and I'm taking a shot there all day. I think this has a likely chance to go into the scorecards as well. And Court McGee didn't shoot a single takedown on my boy Carlos Condit, so I can't guarantee he's going to come out here and shoot one against Matt Brown either. So plus 195 for a fight that I think has a good chance of going to decision between 2 vets. Take Matt Brown as my underdog. Don't know if I get to the window, though.
Yeah, you're right. I don't agree with it. I look at Matt Brown over the course of his career, and I don't think that he's got a legitimate UFC win since 2015. You look at the guys that he has beaten since then: Diego Sanchez, Ben Saunders, and Diego Lima. I don't think any of those guys were rightful UFC additions in the first place. Where Court McGee, you touched on it, his ability to extend fights and continue his grinding pressure while continuing to shoot the takedowns, I do think are something that's going to get him the win on the scorecards. And plus, he's at least shown a few times that he, outside of his last performance, that he does have the durability. I'm not necessarily worried about him getting finished here against Matt Brown, and Matt Brown not being able to pull out a fight against somebody in Brian Barberena, where I do think that Matt should have all these advantages over him, is definitely concerning considering the amount of mileage that he has on him in his career, and having 19 losses. It's tough to look beside. We're approaching a 500 fighter right here. So I definitely do understand the price tag, but I guess you're right. Ultimately, we're seeing 2 aging fighters, and it's probably going to decision. So I definitely see where you're coming from on taking the plus money right there. Now is for our prop of the card. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Prop of the card. have two that I'm looking at, but I think I'm going to go with the Ji Young Kim by decision at
I
plus
love it.
money.
Love it.
One is at plus money, so you're getting
Yeah.
somebody's main path to victory. That's a 2-1 favorite at plus money. It's just tough to look past. I think Mandy Bohm is tough enough that she can take all the strikes that Ji Young Kim has to throw at her. I don't see Kim getting the takedown and really threatening there. And like I said, I think if she keeps it on the feet, she can just outpoint her to a decision. And it's tough to look past. So as long I know that this is about as low level as you can get at women's flyweight, but I do like the fact that we're not having to pay juice for a path to victory that I see pretty likely. I see it playing out Kim decision like 60% of the time, and if I'm getting plus money on it, it's hard to argue that I don't have an edge there.
I'm with you, man. I think Kim could look like the bet of the card if we just don't want to lay chalk on women's MMA and seeing that plus number there. I'm with you, man. I like it. I'm going to take another decision prop. I'm going to go Ian Garry by decision plus 130. Nice way to take a minus 325 in his most likely win condition. We're talking about a guy who's went the full distance with Weeks, Gabe Green, and 30 seconds away from going the distance with Song Kanan. And I put D-Rod's durability up there with those guys as well. Submission, I guess, may be live, but again, Ian Garry's yet to kind of mix in that ground game, and D-Rod's yet to be put away on the feet. So I like this fight to go to decision. And that's where I like Ian to just kind of be a step ahead the whole time with his physical advantages, just being faster, more technical, the one mixing in the strikes. That Dalby fight was pretty indicative to me that if we see Ian Garry come out here and let his kicks go, it really stifles the volume and boxing of D-Rod. Better grappler, 5-round gas tank. Again, I think in 3 of his 4 UFC fights, he's hit over 100 significant strikes. So I think Ian's got all the tools to get it done here as he climbs the rankings. I just think, again, you're not finishing Weeks, you're not finishing Green. As you climb the ranks, I think you might not finish the tougher guys either. So I'm going to go Ian Garry by decision at plus 130, my prop as well this week.
I like it. Okay, another part of the podcast I kind of struggled on. It's my best bet of the card. I'm going to go with a fight that we've touched on a little bit. Mine's going to be Anthony Smith over Johnny Walker. It's one that I'll probably end up finding a unit for, but not multiple units. It's a pretty high, it's a pretty volatile fight here.
Sure.
He's going up against somebody as explosive as Walker is always cause for concern, because at the end of the day, I think Walker could beat anybody on the 205 roster. He just has that type of fight ending power, and him having size, it's tough to look past. But when I look at pure skill and breakdown of skill, I do think that Anthony Smith, he's fought at a higher level, he's proven himself at a higher level, and the 50 fights on his record is a little bit concerning, but he's always kind of shown the ability to withstand an early pressure of his opponents, and I do think that he just has the skill set to make this fight a little bit longer, put Walker in some situations that he's not necessarily used to. And then Anthony Smith having a legitimate Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, I think that adds just another component into where he definitely could dominate this fight if it finds its way on the mat. So Anthony Smith at pick'em price here, I do think that it's a buy low spot. I'm going to make it my best bet of the card, although best bet being only 1 unit, it's a tough sell,
Best bet for me, I think it's a buy low spot on Cody Stamann. I got in at minus 120, and I think it's minus 165 right now. But you can still get his decision prop at even money, and that's how he's gotten 6 of his 7 UFC wins. But I'm big on Cody Stamann to win here. Quite frankly, I don't really get the love for Douglas Silva, De Andrade. You're looking at a 38-year-old bantamweight. Brazilian, 38 years old, they're going to take a drastic step down one day. We're going to see it in one of these fights coming up. Regardless of that, he's a bantamweight who, in my opinion, is very finish reliant. He doesn't really know how to win minutes. And I think he's going to be a step behind Cody Stamann here. Cody Stamann has been a top 15 for a long time. He might not be a top 5, but you don't get to the top 10 without going through Cody Stamann. And he's fought a very good list of competition. I think he has a superior gas tank. I think he has the better wrestling. And Cody's got very underrated boxing. I think he knows how to win minutes in the cage here. And he's shown me zero reasons to worry that Douglas De Andrade is going to finish him. Cody's never been finished on the feet by knockout. And the 2 times he's been subbed, you're talking about a Suliev stretch, which has happened like single digit times. And it's by the guy who's won like 13 fights in a row at bantamweight right now and is holding your belt. Then the other time, it's a 40-second guillotine after Saeed kind of hurts him with a shot to the body and makes him kind of panic shoot. Saeed's proven again that he can lock up guillotines when people kind of shoot in on him, you know? I don't think DSDA does either of those two, man. Again, I go back to this being a minus 120 quite shocked me. I think it's a buy low spot. That minus 120 indicates 55%. I get closer to 63, 65% here on Cody. So I think the public's agreeing with me as well. I've got 1.5 units on him to return 1.25 units, and Cody's my best bet this Saturday, man.
I like it. I like it. We move on to the quick pick section of the podcast where we start off the night in the women's bantamweight division. We see Jessica Rose Clark taking on Tanara Lisboa. Lisboa is a big girl. I've seen a couple of shots taken on her as a dog, and I don't hate it. I think she's actually moving into favorite territory now. I definitely understand it, but when we talk about low-level women's MMA fights, this might as well be the poster for it. So I'll be laying off of that fight for sure. I'll take Lisboa, though, in her UFC debut. I think that she'll just be the all-around bigger girl, which means a lot in women's MMA.
I'm going to side on the other side of Jessica Rose Clark. Will not be getting to the window, but I see a grappling advantage. And in her last 3 or 4 fights, win or lose, Jessica's grappling in them. So, you know, I don't think Lisboa, the Muay Thai specialist fighting very low level, is going to lock up the arm bars the same way as Toliarenko and stuff is. So I'll take Jessica Rose Clark. Be honest with you, that doesn't go the distance at plus money. First fight on the card. It's a little tempting to me. I think both these girls could finish each other. Moving on up, Gabe Green taking on Brian Battle at 170. You know, Brian Battle got dominated by a like 20 and 1 Russian or something last time, and now you're getting him as an underdog, and I think that's the reason why. I don't know if Gabe Green can technically replicate that here, so I'm gonna go Brian Battle, man, at plus money. I think he's the side.
Yeah, I don't hate that read at all. You talk about the 2 losses that Gabe Green has. I also don't think that that we see Brian Battle win those either. I think he loses to D-Rod and to Ian Garry. So I guess I see the close to pick'em fight, but I'm with you. I think we're honestly getting a buy low spot here. So I'm tempted to lean Battle as well in this matchup where Green's biggest advantage seems to be his durability, and I don't ever like betting on that. Moving down to the women's flyweight, we have Ji Young Kim taking on Mandy Bohm. I struggle to find any positives for Mandy Bohm. And Ji Young Kim, she's been around for a while. I think she's due for a win. The UFC's kind of setting her up. So I'll take Ji Young Kim here.
I'm on Ji Young Kim. I'm thinking about laying chalk on women's MMA one last time. If it burns me again, never again. But
Sure.
I like Ji Young Kim, man. And if you can get a decision prop at plus money, I think that's the way you should lean to. Moving on up, lightweight, Natan Levy versus Pete Rodriguez. Supposed to happen a couple weeks back. I think Pete coming down from 170, 155 had some issues, and I'm hoping for him again this week. I've taken the under 2.5 again. I put 1.5 units on it earlier today. I think Natan Levy gets the round 2 or 3 finish, or Pete gets the round 1 finish, but I'm going to side with Natan Levy. I think there's a finish here, though, man.
Yeah, I like the under as opposed to taking the side. I think for the side, I'm going to go Pete Rodriguez. I think he can crowd him early, and I don't necessarily trust Levy to take it to the ground. So I'll take Pete Rodriguez here as a dog. Don't feel too confident about it, but for the sake of the podcast, yeah. Going to the men's bantamweight division, we have Cody Stamann taking on Douglas Silva de Andrade. I told you earlier, whenever I bet, who was it? Help me out
Morozov.
Here. Yeah, Sergey Morozov. I bet like 4 or something units on him, and Douglas absolutely starched him. Tough L for me, so I'm done trying to fade him. I do think that Cody Stamann, like you said, it does seem like a buy low spot here. So I'll go with Stamann, although it would not surprise me if we see Andrade find another finish here, just being as powerful as he is.
What won't surprise me is when I beat the closing line by 45 cents and it doesn't happen on Saturday. You know, it seems like the trend lately when this line moves, these fights don't end up happening. I hope it stays together. I like Cody Stamann to win here. Carl Williams taking on Chase Sherman, another fight that's been rescheduled from a couple weeks ago. Clear path to victory for Carl Williams with the takedowns, but I don't know, man. I'm not laying minus 400 something on Carl Williams. He's going to be the pick. No action on the fight though.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. It's hard to trust Chase Sherman against anybody in the UFC, so I definitely think that Carl Williams is the side here. Moving to the welterweight division, I think it's our prelim headliner, Matt Brown, taking on Court McGee. I'm on Court McGee here. I think that he's able to grind this out like he has in his past few wins. So I'm on Court McGee's side here, although the numbers really gotten away from me.
Quick pick section doesn't mean too much. My betting card's what means the most. I'm going to side with the underdog. Plus 195, Matt Brown. That's where the value is for me. Going to take Matt Brown. Starting off our main card at 170, Tim Means, Alex Morono. It's another fight, man, where, again, a couple years back, minus the slight durability concerns of Means, and it's a 50-50 fight for me. A fight I think goes to decision more than likely. I could see Alex Morono coming through, but I don't like the line. I think the value is on Tim Means. Give me Dirty Bird as a dog again.
It is not a few years ago, though, and I do think that Tim Means' time has gone and passed. Now, that might be because I think I've bet on him in his last two and he's lost, so it's hitting a little harder for me. I think that Alex Morono is going to get it done here. He's still only like 32 or 33, right. And I think that he has all the tools to get this fight where he needs to get the dub. So I'll go with Alex Morono here. Moving up the card to our light heavyweight division, Carlos Olberg taking on Ihor Potieria. Like I said, I think that Ihor, the way that he fights, it's all set up for Carlos Olberg to get a stoppage win here. But it's tough to trust Olberg at this price tag when he's only got one way to win, and that's by striking. So I'll take Carlos Olberg here. Wouldn't play him.
Yeah, I go back to like recently looking at Olberg and thinking he's turning the corner. I mean, he put Tafon and Chukwi away in round one. Like that's a dude who's given some guys some tough fights before, you know, and then to go out there and do it again to Negamarianu, again, looks impressive, man. So I think Olberg's turning the corner. I think he puts Poteria away here by TKO. D-Rod versus Machado, Ian Machado, Garry. I'm going to side with my dude, man. I like what I see from Ian Garry. I think the skill set's there and may not get to finish, but I think he gets through D-Rod.
Yeah, I'm going to stay on the Garry fade train. I don't think that he's that good. His time will come. This is his best competition to date. So, I don't know. I'm on the Daniel Rodriguez side here. I think the value's on him. And I told you the Rodriguez scorecards no action prop is kind of how I'm looking to play it, because I would agree that he's pretty finish reliant. But I think Ian Garry will give him those opportunities. So I'll go with Daniel Rodriguez here. Moving on to our co-main event, we're back in the light heavyweight division. Anthony Smith versus Johnny Walker. I think it'll be an absolute banger for as long as it lasts, but I'm going to go with Anthony Smith to, withstand that early pressure and then find the victory later on in the fight.
Little disagreements on the card here on Saturday. I'm going to go with Johnny Walker in the co-main event. No bet, not much conviction, but I do think Anthony Smith is far past the prime, and Johnny Walker's live for a finish in any fight. Gonna go with Johnny Walker. And then main event, Rozenstruik versus Jailton Almeida. I mean, again, I think it's a tailor-made matchup. I moved Almeida to the main event. I know what the UFC wants here. I think Jailton Almeida is gonna get Rozenstruik down and find the finish in round one, man.
I would agree. I think you're right. We know who the UFC wants. Again, it's tough just not ever seeing Almeida really tested.
Yeah.
So, I'll go Almeida here. He should get it done like all of the rest, but if it stays standing, it is not his fight. I think Rozenstruik's definitely got him if it stays on the feet. So I'll pick Almeida for the sake of the podcast.
I don't think we've even seen him get hit more than like once or twice in a fight. It's like Hamzat level perfection in his fight so far. So
is this his Burns,
Hope not.
No.
12 total fights, man. Charlotte starting at 11:30 Eastern. I love a good day set of fights, not having to stay up late. Hopefully we tipped out some good spots, some good fights for you. Looking to have 2 green cards next week to recap. We'll see y'all then.
Peace.